The child asks, "Which wolf will win the fight?" The elder responds, "The one I feed." That doesn't mean we try to deny or hurt or kill the angry wolf. If we did that, we'd end up in a long battle, all the while somehow making that wolf more powerful through our hostility and fear. Hating that wolf sucks the strength right out of us. Instead, we calmly pay attention to the angry wolf and let go of believing they have the answers. If we can do that, they end up lying down next to us, no longer an enemy. We help strengthen the kind and loving wolf, giving it nourishment and support so that we can follow it. That peaceful wolf can become our steady companion and show us the way through all kinds of different life experiences. Restful or chaotic, enjoyable or disappointing experiences may come and go, but we can have a guide with us through it all. This is what mindfulness can help you do. Mindfulness allows us to see our thoughts and feelings as they are beginning. It's very powerful to know what we're feeling as we're feeling it, know what we're thinking as we're thinking it. With mindfulness, we can choose what will strengthen and bring into action, and we can choose what we will gently let go of. We don't have to be at the mercy of old habits or old ways of thinking or old ways of being. We are empowered. It just takes practice.
Isn't that great? That's it. It just takes practice. It's paying attention to everything. It's waking up and going, I'm anxious today. You know, what does anxiety feel like in my body? Well, anxiety feels like my heart hurts a little bit. Anxiety feels like I want to cry. Anxiety feels like my throat closes up a little bit. And so what does joy feel like in my body? Wow, joy, I feel like I can fly. I have all this energy. You know, it's interesting. I can sit there and ask someone who's obviously in a good mood, like, hey, I'm doing great. I'm really happy. But I can look at somebody else who's like, you can tell there's something not quite right. And I'm like, well, what's going on? I feel blah. Well, what the heck is blah, right? We can describe these positive, but why are we not describing what we perceive as hard? They're just as much a part of who we are, and that's what mindfulness is. Again, it's becoming as comfortable with all of these emotions, both what we consider challenging, because they're all there as learning lessons, and they all give us opportunities to move forward, as well as those positive. We have all of our students, undergrad and grad, journal, because journaling is just a really great self-reflective tool. We do a lot of writing. And in this instance, we have them journal about different situations that occur each week that really stood out. It can be positive or negative. And I had a student once, and I always love to use this example. He's a 19-year-old young gentleman, ASU student, and he got in a fender bender on University and Rural. Busy place, right? We all know that. Now, he's 19 years old. We don't even have a fully developed neocortex there yet. But he journals about this. Number one, he acknowledges the situation. He accepts it. He's like, I ran into the guy in front of me. He wrote that down. Number two is really important, intentionally paying attention to both the body and the mind. So he says, my heart rate is increasing. I'm breathing really fast. I feel like I'm going to throw up. He goes, I feel my fists are like tensing up. And he wrote off something to the side, which I thought was just amazing. He goes, I'm going into sympathetic. He's recognizing immediately what his body is doing. Emotions, I'm scared, I'm frustrated, I'm upset, my dad's gonna kill me. He wrote off to the side, Dad probably would, right? So he writes all this stuff, but he's paying attention to it. Then number three, he accepts it. It is what it is. It is what it is at this point. He has an acceptance of where he's at, and so he goes, I ran into this guy in front of me. He goes, his action towards change, number four, what can I do? I'm gonna do some breathing exercises. I'm gonna do a quick 4-7-8 breath to calm myself down so that I can go and I can talk with the police officer and I can talk with the guy I ran into. Now, I don't know about you, but for a 19-year-old young man, that's incredibly responsive in an incredibly stressful situation. And that's really what we're trying to teach people to do is step back, because I'll tell you, my situation is a carpool lane at the high school. I don't know about you guys, but I'm like, I go through there and I'm constantly going, okay, what is happening? You are in the carpool lane right now. How do you feel? Because, you know, it gets really chaotic. But it's being able to do that and step back and say, okay, it's that person who cuts you off in traffic, and instead of letting it trigger you, stepping back and saying, okay, that's okay. And so we go through these 4 different parts, and we talk about, well, how do we deregulate? Just like what you saw with JT, he talked about breathing. I call it the informal breath. It's that moment you recognize you're going into sympathetic. It's the moment your body is telling you everything you need to know that you're about to be triggered, that you make a decision, a conscious decision, to step back. And so one thing he was showing you, he showed you a couple of different really cool breaths. One of the ones I like to show is from Dr. Andrew Weil. It's a 4-7-8 breath. And it's really incredible because there's so many out there. And it's figuring out what type of breathing technique that you really enjoy, it works for you. But the simple act of doing this helps you deregulate the nervous system. Think about it. What do you tell people to do when they're having a panic attack? What do we tell them to do? We tell them to breathe. We look at like Lamaze. What's Lamaze all about? It's about breathing, right? We look at pain management. So we know this is a really quick tool to help the nervous system step back, just as mentioned earlier. So another breathing technique that I can bring to you guys that you'll learn today, this 4-7-8. This is a great one, again, Dr. Andrew Weil. It's where you inhale through the nose for a count of 4, you hold for a count of 7, and then you exhale forcibly through the mouth for a count of 8. Now, you can put your tongue on the roof of your mouth. That's what he suggests. I got to tell you, it makes kind of this really cool swishing noise. My undergrads, they don't like to swish. I've noticed that. So I don't always make them do the tongue on the roof of the mouth. But if you are comfortable doing it, do it. Otherwise, just kind of forcibly exhale. But let's try this a couple of times. And again, too, if you have any type of asthma or you've had bronchitis or some other kind of breathing disorder, this might be, if this count is uncomfortable or makes you lightheaded, then, change the count a little bit so that you don't fall over. That's always good too, right? I've actually had that happen. Okay, so everybody ready to try this? And are you excited? Like, yes, right? Like, I can't believe I get to breathe again, right? Because you guys were so good at it earlier. Okay, so here we go. For a count of 4, through the nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You have to really push, don't you? One more time. In through the nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, turn to the person next to you and say, that was glorious. Go ahead and do that. Wasn't that, it was glorious, right? It was glorious. And you guys were glorious at doing it. You were amazing. So when do you use this? You use this throughout your day when you recognize that you are moving into a heightened alert or that sympathetic, that fight or flight. You use it to help yourself deregulate so that you can be the responsive person, personally and professionally, that you want to be. Now, this is where the magic happens. This is a formal daily meditation. Now, studies have shown us as little as 3 weeks of 10 minutes a day of purposely training the brain to be present. By the way, that's what meditation is training the brain to be present. It's getting away from rumination and projection. We're right here. 10 minutes a day literally changes the brain. It increases the density of the neocortex, right? Focus and responsiveness increase, and it shrinks the amygdala that's located in that limbic region. That's going to reduce fear and anxiety. It literally changes the way you react to situations and thus your behavior. That's pretty powerful when you think this shouldn't cost you a dime to do it. 10 minutes a day. You guys, everybody has 10 minutes a day. I'll tell you, a lot of the folks I work with will tell me, hey, they're like, Jamie, at the end of a shift, when I'm driving home, I'll sit in my truck in the driveway, and I have a 10-minute meditation that I'll do. And it helps me be the wife, the husband, the mother, the father that I want to be when I walk in those doors, particularly after a long shift where I maybe have had some vicarious trauma because of the calls I've been on. There's always time to figure out how to work this. A lot of my students love to use it at night because it helps them go to sleep. Because what's happening, how many people have laid there and your head's just like, you just have thoughts over and over and over. You're in sympathetic. Is your brain going to let you go to sleep if it thinks you're going to die? It'd be a terrible brain if it did that, right? It's like doing you a favor right now. That's what it considers. So you being able to step back and calm the brain down is what's going to allow you to go to sleep, move back into that parasympathetic. If you're doing meditation at night and you notice that you start to fall asleep, that's awesome, use it. But then pick another time during the day where you actively engage the brain in that present moment because, again, we're training the brain to be present. So I wanted to take I wanted to show you guys an app, just a simple meditation. We have our own through ASU that we use, but I want people to know this shouldn't cost you money. You don't have to sign up for classes to do this, that there are a ton of different apps out there that you can use. Some cost money, some are free. There's also a lot of really great just YouTube meditations, because meditation is very personal. You got to figure out what works for you. And at the end of this presentation, I'll have my email. If you want me to give you my list of Jamie's recommendations, I'm happy to give it to you. But we're going to actually go through and we're going to do a headspace meditation. We're going to go for about 5 minutes. So I'm going to ask everybody to sit up nice and straight. He's going to ask you to close your eyes. The reason he asks you to close your eyes, it helps reduce the amount of visual stimuli coming into the brain because, again, we're trying to calm the brain down. The brain will never be completely quiet. You're going to have thoughts. That's part of it. It's you being aware and catching those thoughts. If you're not comfortable closing your eyes, you don't have to close your eyes. Again, that's why meditation, though, they'll ask you to close the eyes. So here we go.
Hi, and welcome to day 1 of Take 10. Over the next 10 days, I'm going to be showing you how to get a little bit more headspace in your life. But the starting point is just to get familiar with this really simple and easy to learn exercise, and then just commit to doing it each day. But remember, this is your 10 minutes. So all you have to do is sit back, relax, and allow your body and mind to unwind. To begin with, once you're sitting comfortably, I'd like you just to gently close your eyes. Begin by taking a few deep breaths, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. As you breathe in through the nose, I'd like you to focus on your chest expanding, lungs filling with air, and as you breathe out, noticing how the body softens each time, how it lets go of any tension as the body exhales. Just do that 2 or 3 times, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. You can then just allow the breath to return to its natural rhythm, in and out through the nose. Now, in closing the eyes, you'll probably become a lot more aware of your other physical senses. To begin with, I'd just like you to focus your attention on the sensation of touch, and in particular, the feeling of the body pressing down on the chair beneath you. Just notice whether the weight falls evenly down through the middle of the body, or whether it's perhaps leaning a little more to the left or to the right. In the same way, I'd like you to notice the sensation of the soles of the feet on the floor. Noticing where the point of contact is strongest. Whether it's on the heel, the toe, the inside or the outside of the foot. And in the same way, just noticing the weight of the hands and the arms just resting in the lap or on your legs. I'd also like you to notice any sounds. So very often sounds are seen as an obstacle, something that gets in the way of a quiet mind. But in this exercise, we're going to make use of those sounds. So take 10 or 20 seconds just to notice all the different little sounds around you, no matter how pleasant or how unpleasant you find them. Then just gently bringing the attention back to the body. Notice how your body feels as you sit there. Normally we're so busy doing things, thinking about things. not really aware of how the body feels. Just to help you do this, what I'd like you to do, starting at the top of the head, take about 20 seconds or so just to mentally scan down through the body, noticing which parts of the body feel relaxed, comfortable, and at ease, and which parts of the body feel perhaps a little tense or tight in some way. You don't have to do anything, you don't have to try and change anything. You're just building up a picture of how the body feels. Don't worry too much if your mind wanders off as you're doing this. Perfectly normal. But as soon as you realise you've been distracted, that the mind's wandered off, just gently bringing the attention back again to those physical feelings as you scan down through the body. And as you're doing this, you might begin to notice as well the underlying mood or the emotional quality of the mind. Again, it's not something to analyse or judge, just something to notice if it's obvious. Now you've probably already noticed, but as you're sitting there, as the body breathes, it creates a sort of rising and falling sensation. You might feel this in your stomach, maybe around the diaphragm, the chest, the shoulders. Doesn't really matter where it is. And I don't want you to breathe in any particular way. Just allow the body to breathe naturally. Just noticing where in the body you feel that movement most strongly, and the rhythm of the breath. So are the breaths long or short? Are they deep or shallow? Just take a few moments to follow that movement, that rising and falling sensation.
Okay, I'm going to have everybody take a deep breath. As they're taking a deep breath, go ahead and raise your arms up. Breathe in and stretch up. Really stretch your fingers apart. If you want to lean back a little bit, lean back to where it's comfortable. And then as you exhale, go ahead and drop your arms down. That was about 8 minutes. Think about that, 10 minutes a day. You think you could handle that, 10 minutes of doing this? That little act is training your brain to be present. Now, I want to point out a couple of things that good meditations do. Do you notice that he utilized your senses? He's like, how does it feel in your chair? What do you hear? The reason, if we look at the brain, the minute you engage a sense, the brain has to be present, right? Because it's gathering data to make sure that you're in a safe situation. So the minute you're like, what do I see? What do I smell? What do I hear? The brain cannot be projecting and ruminating. It needs to be right here. And so if you look at like CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy, they'll tell you if you're getting into a really strong projection or ruminative thought, they'll say, listen, stop. How many things in the room are shaped like a square? How many things can you see that are red or blue? Stop and close your eyes. What do you hear? Because again, what you're doing is you're pulling yourself out of that cycle of that projection or that rumination, and you're coming back to present moment. Every time you do it, you weaken the connections that you've created to projection and rumination, and you strengthen that connection to present moment. That's all you're doing. I can't tell you how many students I'll have come up to me and say, you know, my therapist has been telling me to do these things for years, and I never understood why. And now I'll do it, because people just want to know why, right? Especially if you look at young adults, they want to know why. And so that's the why. The other thing I want you to think about, I love using this example. Imagine your thoughts are like a puppy. Has anybody seen a puppy, had a puppy? You guys know what puppies are, right? Yeah, okay. So your thoughts are like a puppy. And you first get this puppy and you want to train it to sit next to you. Does that puppy, if you put it on the ground, does it stay right there next to you? Does that puppy stay? No, what's the puppy do? The puppy wanders. So do you do this? Are you like, oh, you are the worst puppy on the planet, and then you go and you kick the puppy, right? Do you do that? No, you shouldn't even have a puppy if you're going to do that, right? But that's the same thing with our thoughts. So if your thoughts are wandering, you're not like, you can't judge it and go, oh, you're the worst meditator on the planet. What's wrong with you? What do? We go get the puppy. We pick it up. We know it's the nature of the puppy. We're like, oh, you're so cute. And we bring it back, and we put it down. And what does that darn puppy do again? It wanders. And what do? We go get that puppy, and we bring that puppy back. That is you during your meditation. Your brain's going to be busy, sometimes busier than other times. As a thought comes by, you acknowledge it. Then you use one of your senses, the breath, touch, smell, to anchor yourself back to that present moment. So it takes time, and you're never going to, there may be times you have this really zen moment where it's very quiet, but most of the time you're not going to. Again, the key here is recognizing what your brain is actually doing. The other thing that we do with a lot of the folks is we use somatic exercises or moving meditations like yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, because sometimes people just cannot sit there and do this meditation and stay in this place. A lot of the folks I work with who have PTSD or moral injury, I'm actually going to be doing a big speaking thing for the Veterans State Conference on moral injury, but they get into this point like PTSD where they're cognitively aware that they're okay, right? But they can't get that primitive loop between the limbic and the brainstem to shut off. They're in this constant hyper alert. So we use the body to calm the brain down, the body to get all three regions working together again. And that's what these different meditations do. Yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, they're beautiful ways that the body can actually calm the mind. And that's why it's so incredibly cool that you guys are actually doing that even throughout this entire day, just learning these little things, these little exercises that you can take a break and do a stretch and a breath. We also look at gratitude. This is big, right? Doesn't cost you anything. I can't tell you how many times I've looked at these studies and I've talked with people. There was a study that came out that showed two groups. One group would wake up in the morning and they'd write down 3 things they were grateful for, and then they would reread it before they went to bed. Didn't cost them a dime. The other group didn't do anything. After 3 months, the group that did this were happier 6 months post than the group that did nothing. Doesn't cost you anything to think about what are you grateful for. First thing in the morning, what do we tend to do when we wake up? How many people do a to-do list or things I have to get done? The minute you're waking up, yeah. But instead of doing that, maybe saying, you know what am I woke up. Thank you, universe, right? I'm so incredibly lucky. I have a job I get to go to. I love my family. I have a great sense of humor. What are some things that you are grateful for about you? And there's an assignment I actually do with my students in my Stress 2 course, and it's called Acts of Gratitude, Paying It Forward. And every week they have to do something nice for another person, or they have to write a letter or an email or call someone and let them know how grateful they are for their presence in their lives. So I love this story. I had a student a few years ago who called her parents in California to tell them thank you. And she was like, Mom, Dad, thank you for everything you do for me. You've helped me with school. You've always been there for me. I love you so much, and I really, really am grateful. Well, what do you think her parents did? The very next day they drove out. Something had to be wrong for her to have called them and told her that she was grateful. And so she brought them into class with her, and she's like, Professor, here are my parents because they came out when I called to tell them thank you. And I'm like, well, somebody's not saying thank you enough, right? As we go through. But that little act of gratitude is huge. And finally, this is going to be my last little video I want to end with, why mindfulness is a superpower.
You may have heard this word mindfulness. It's become something of a buzz phrase of late. I'm going to give you one simple, serviceable definition, which is this. Mindfulness is the ability to know what's happening in your head at any given moment without getting carried away by it. Imagine how useful this could be. Just as an example, you're driving down the road and somebody cuts you off in traffic. How do you normally react? I think most of us, we normally react by having a thought, which is, I'm pissed. And then what happens next? You immediately, habitually, reflexively inhabit that thought. You actually become pissed. There's no buffer between the stimulus and your reaction. With just a little bit of mindfulness, in that same situation, you might notice my chest is buzzing, my ears are turning red, I'm having a starburst of self-righteous thoughts, I'm getting angry. But you don't necessarily have to act on it and chase that person down the road, screaming at them with your kids in the back of the car thinking you've gone nuts. Now, you might be thinking, don't I need to get angry sometimes? Aren't I justified? I would say yes, but probably not as much as you think. The proposition here is not that you should be rendered by mindfulness into some lifeless, non-judgmental blob. The proposition is that you should learn how to respond wisely to things that happen to you rather than just reacting blindly. And that, my friends, is a superpower. How do you get it? The way to get it is through meditation. I believe that meditation and mindfulness are the next big public health revolution. In the 1940s, if you told somebody you were going running, they would have said, "Who's chasing you?" But then what happened next? The scientists swooped in, they showed that physical exercise is really good for you, and now all of us do it, and if we don't, we feel guilty about it. And that's where I think we're headed with mindfulness and meditation. It's going to join the pantheon of no-brainers like brushing your teeth, eating well, and taking the meds your doctor prescribed for you. Let me just close by saying, mindfulness is not going to solve all of your problems. It's not going to render your life a nonstop parade of unicorns and rainbows. Nonetheless, this is a superpower, and one that is accessible by you immediately.
And I love it because it really is. I mean, it comes down to choices, right? Last little study I'll throw out there that came out of Harvard, they're trying to kind of break down, well, what is happiness? If we had to look at genetics and environment, our jobs, how much money we make, and then what we actively do to be happy, what would be percentages that we would see? And they came back with genetics being 50%. It's pretty high. Some of us are naturally a little higher, a little happier, have a higher thermostat than other people. But then they had 50% left. And they said, okay, well, what percentage is environment? Your job, how much money you make, versus what percentage is what you're actively doing? And so what percentage was environment? Anybody want to make a guess? It was 10%. That was it. That blows my students away because a lot of them are in the majors they're in because they're assuming that if they have money and success or fame, they're going to be happy, right? And I have to explain to them there's no correlation between money and happiness once you reach a certain income point, and that's where your base needs are met. So if you're living under a bridge in Tempe, money's going to buy a lot of happiness because you don't have base needs. But the minute your base needs are met, you have a roof over your head, you can pay your bills, there's no direct correlation. And so it's interesting because my students will say, well, I'll be happy when? I'll be happy when I get that